Re-Educating Geeks, the podcast where friends help friends discover new passions. I'm geek host Alice, and in the studio today we have...
Bri, Megan,
and Cassie.
We're today really for two reasons. We are going to, and I'm air quoting, re-educate Bri and Cassie on Terminator. And we're here obviously to celebrate the 30th anniversary of this classic 1980s action movie. So just general spoiler alert, obviously we're going to talk about the movie in detail. Bri, why don't you give us a refresher for those who haven't seen the movie in a long time, just a quick rundown of the plot.
So, Terminator is about a young woman who notices that people with her same name are getting murdered, and then a naked Arnold Schwarzenegger shows up and tries to murder her, and she has to stay alive because her unborn child, not yet conceived child, is the future of the resistance.
That's fair, guys. Think that's fair?
I think that's pretty accurate.
That's pretty accurate. Yeah. So, since we're quote-unquote re-educating you guys, Cassie, when was the last time that you saw the film? How old were you and what year was that?
I think I must have been like 10, and that would have been like 97-ish. You know, we've always had cable for the most part. When I was a kid, it was just a way of life. And so we had HBO. So I remember it playing in the background, and it wasn't something like my parents sat us down to watch by any means, but I remember, it playing at some point. So I was not paying attention. I remembered bits and pieces. I was in the room when it played, but I feel like I was probably like playing or reading or something when it was playing. So really, my understanding of the film or what I had remembered from the film was completely like colored by almost 20 years of
stuff in between.
Yeah, stuff in between. Yeah. So it was definitely it was a re-education to some degree, but it felt like I was taking a course over because I'd gotten an incomplete.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How about you, Bri?
Within the past year, I've watched some of it and the entire ending scene while drinking in a bar. So there was no sound, but I was kind of following along. And then before that, it had to have been 10 years.
Wow. So, Megan, I know, conversely, you've seen this movie many, many times.
Yeah,
Do you remember the first time?
No, I don't. I know that I saw Terminator 2 first.
Oh, okay.
And it was one of those things where my dad sat me down and we're like, okay, we're watching Terminator now. We're going to watch the second one because it's better. This is how my dad introduces me to everything. And then we're going to watch the first one. A couple years later, we did the same thing with the Alien series. We're going to watch Aliens first because it's better. Thanks, Dad. But yeah, I have no idea the first time I saw this movie. I know I've seen it many, many times over the course of my life, for sure.
It's one of those movies that they show on cable a lot, you know? So if you watch cable, it's going to be on TNT or USA or Spike or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. So I saw it. It came out the year I graduated from high school. So it was one of the first R-rated movies I saw.
Ooh, scandalous.
I know, right? And it just pales. I know we've talked about this on the show before, but its R rating just seems to pale in comparison to what you just see on regular television these days.
You don't see swinging dick on regular television.
Yeah, but well, now you do. Game of Thrones.
That's
cable.
regular. That's premium.
True.
Right, yeah.
You have to pay extra for that.
You have to pay extra for
as
for
one
penis.
should.
Yeah. But in terms of its violence, and I think that's part of just the style of it. Cassie's giving me the huge brow furrow, looking at me like I'm crazy. Did it come off as really violent?
I don't know. I was thinking, literally, I'm watching this on Amazon, and I'm thinking the older I get, my tolerance for brutality, decreases. And so maybe it's because I had these expectations, or I forget. I think I have, this... these blinders about the 80s or something where I just expected it to be less violent, even though, of course, RoboCop.
Yeah, I was
right.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right.
Super violent. So I don't know why I was deluded, but the whole time I'm like, what? Why? Why is there so much death and carnage? And it's just a part of those 80s flicks, and really I just think it's my tolerances.
I think it might just be that, I recently watched the premiere of Gotham, and to me, for a show that was on at 7 o'clock at night, it seemed really violent and very bloody, and I was just really shocked about that. But
I just sprinted through Sleepy Hollow and the beheadings in it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
That show was
gory.
pretty graphic, yeah.
Maybe it's just Fox, because they also have the following.
Fox does like to push the envelope. We all know that, yeah.
Because if they've got Sleepy Hollow and Gotham and the following. They're all gross.
And then they've got FX and whatever what is their new one?
FXX.
FFX.
Double
blah,
X.
blah, blah, blah.
Double FX.
Yes, that's
Okay.
it.
Yeah. So I don't know. I felt like it was violent, but it might have been through blinders of, forgetting how violent 80s films really are.
Definitely. So let's talk about 80s action movies and in style. I mean, one of the things I'm always curious about, because of course there'll always be a generation that, their understanding and what they're used to seeing in a filmmaking style is going to have changed. Filmmaking from 1980 to the 2000s looks really different, and sort of what people today, when they watch an 80s movies, whether they're just like, oh, this is just silly, these special effects look ridiculous, and why is this editing pacing like this, I'm used to this, and this, and what they really might think of the 80s style of filmmaking.
Well, I was surprised at how I think this movie does hold up really well. It's paced a little bit more slowly, but I'm totally fine with that, because it's not just full of quick cuts all the time, which drive me crazy.
Ooh, yeah.
I mean, it's good to an extent, but I still thought they made some interesting choices with the special effects, like the completely animatronic Arnold Schwarzenegger head.
Yeah.
It looks good. Matt, I watched this with Matt, so he had a lot to say. It was really fun to watch it with him. And we agreed that it looks good, but it doesn't look convincing. Right?
Yeah.
There was a
That's
different,
what it is.
I mean, there's a total difference there. And on some of the scenes, I just wonder why they made those choices. I can see why they built that animatronic head, because they used it a lot to really good effect at the very end of the film when he's driving that big truck before they blow it up. And you can see why they needed that animatronic face, because there's a really cool shot where you can see like all the way through his cheek. And they didn't have like computer graphics the way that they do today. But I don't know if I thought it was an interesting choice to do it in that scene where he's like digging out his eye.
Yeah, there were like
Yeah.
lingering shots of it where I'm like, it looks good, but it doesn't look 5 solid seconds good.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
No, and that often is, I think, on the makeup artists to make that as realistic as possible, to blend it. And of course, whoever, the art department or whoever creates the head itself. But the whole time I was just like, that's not his face. It's not his face, and they've got light on it. Whereas in the truck, it's dark, and there are places where it's dark where the camera is more forgiving. But when they've got him like in the bathroom and the light's clearly on his face, highlighting the glossy nature of it and everything, I'm just like, no, not
That
buying
being
it.
said, it still freaked me out.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
well,
It did its
anything.
I
job.
was just like, stop that. No.
Yeah, anything going into the eye, it just grosses the heck out of me. I found the pacing in this story really good too, and what it might just be me. Of course, I'm going to be interested to hear what you ladies think too. But I feel like there's just not a ton of dialogue, and there's not a ton of I'm not going to use the right word. Explanatory dialogue. Expository dialogue. So there's the bit in the car when, after he's picked up Sarah for the first time, and he's sort of giving her a rundown of the robots and sort of what has happened. And then there's the time in the police station where the jerkwad psychiatrist is interviewing him. But other than that, I don't feel like they spend a ton. I mean, even in the flash forward scene, it's really just storytelling. It's not them sitting like in Inception, where there's that huge long scene where they're explaining to exactly how everything works. And that I enjoyed that about the film, that they just sort of let me go along for the ride and sort of figure it out for myself without feeling
Show
like
me,
they had
don't
to
tell
tell
me.
Yeah, exactly. I enjoyed that about the story structure a lot.
Yeah, it was used well.
Yeah.
And like you said, when they were explaining something, it was just more an organic use of it,
Right.
and further the love story or whatever other aspect they were trying to do in terms of the love story, the obligatory
Love story. Hey, could you just get your love stories out of my action movies?
Do we want to call it a love story, or should we call it like a Stockholm story?
Or a one-night stand story?
It's a one-night stand story. That's what it... I mean, it has to be a one-night stand story because John Connor's name is John Connor. His name is not John Reese. His name is John Connor.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, well,
it's because she's the.
It was the 80s. She probably would have changed her name, but whatever. Yeah.
They loved for ages.
They loved for a lifetime.
Or they loved for a
Right,
lifetime.
whatever. Oh my
In
God.
one night.
How is that possible? There was so much death happening. I don't understand.
Although
how it's
that said, because I do really not, I'm just not a big fan of the love story in the action movie because it feels so not necessary, and they're just doing it just to give the guy somebody to poke or somebody to make you think that he has something to live for or whatever. Like, she's purely there to move the male story along. But in this one, it's kind of
Needed.
necessary,
it is.
frankly,
Absolutely.
for the franchise. So it doesn't bother me. And as much as their sex scene kills me, the sex scene at the beginning kills me even more when she has the headphones
Oh my
on
gosh.
and is
Oh
like
my
totally not
gosh.
paying attention, and he has her shirt up over.
There was so much wrong with that couple. I still liked them, but
Hey.
there was so much wrong with that.
Whatever they're doing works for them.
Yeah. And she's like getting midnight sandwiches, and I'm like, I could probably live that life. I'm sad that they're obviously going to die.
Yeah.
Yes.
She was going
Clearly.
to share that with him. She made that for them to share, probably.
Yeah.
Yes, oh, that's so sweet.
But she also poured an enormous glass of milk, and I was just like, oh,
Yeah,
that
that
sounds
killed it. That
awful.
killed it right
Oh.
there. That killed it right there. Yeah.
Never mind. You just go ahead and kill her. It's fine.
She likes milk.
Oh my god.
But I did like that setup, as predictable as it was. Like, you realize, oh, he's going to mistake her. Like, I did like that
Yeah.
tension and that conflict. Because for the most part, as ditzy as Ginger was, Matt was pretty cool. Matt, like, held his own for a while.
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
And she was also a good roommate, though.
a good
Like they
friend,
really did a
yeah.
good job
Yeah.
of establishing them as like this couple who works for each other and who are nice to Sarah.
Yeah.
And then they get killed off, and they didn't do anything.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, that's if you're not the main character in this movie, just expect it.
Exactly.
You're gone.
Team up.
I'm just trying to go clubbing.
What was the name of that club? Techno
Techno
Noir.
Tech
Noir.
Noir.
Tech
Tech
So
Noir.
great. Loved
How
it.
80s.
I wanted to go there. I wanted to be there. Like pre-Carnage. I wanted to check that place out.
Pre-Carnage.
Yeah.
My terrible dancing would fit in perfectly there.
I thought the
would
same
mine.
thing. I'm like, oh man, I should have been alive in the 80s
Yeah,
just
little
for the
kicks.
dances alone.
Yes. It was great.
Because Bri and I are like dancing.
Yes, they are.
Lots of shoulders and arms.
So speaking of all the 80s cues, I mean, it is, I think somebody else here said that, it's such a time capsule for the 80s in so many
absolutely.
ways. But, there's the hair.
I was gonna say, how does it do it?
Her hair
How
was
does
so
hair-
big.
It was so shiny and big and feathery and fluffy.
I'd be afraid of it being flammable
probably.
on that set.
But it looked like somehow she had the big 80s hair, but it also looked touchable. And how did they do it?
It's called Moose and a Crimper. I
And
wanted
all
one of
the
those so bad.
clothes,
The Walkman.
The
Yes.
Walkman, the giant.
I had a
vo-
Walkman.
what are we used to call the giant answering machine?
Oh,
Yes.
Everybody was wearing like really killer Nikes.
Yep.
Yeah.
They even like showed him with this Velcro as he was in there, like product placement.
Our new Velcro technology from the 1980s.
And the
Oh, my
payphones.
goodness.
And the
Yes.
payphones, yeah.
She had many attempts at a payphone. There are many payphones. Now everyone would just whip out the cell phone.
Yeah.
So that's why I was thinking any kid, I think about my 18-year-old brother and pretty much anyone younger than him, where they would like see that and like almost think it's
what
another.
world is that?
Yeah, what is this universe? Alternate universe.
That's something Matt was bringing up. Like, okay, because he's sitting there like doing all the math. Okay, so in the future, Kyle Reese is X age at X year. So we figured out that he had to have been born in like 1984 or 85. Like, so he's like mine and Bree's and
Wait a
Cassie's
second.
age.
So don't they send him back in 2029?
Yeah.
And I thought
So
he was like
he looks like he's 29 at the most.
No, he's like in his 30s.
he's like he's like I looked it up. He's supposed to be 27.
when he goes back.
In the script, they wrote him as 21 or 22, and then I looked up the math, and it's something like he's actually like 27 or something.
So what year would he have been born in?
He would have had to have been born in the late 90s.
In the late 90s. Okay, so it does still make sense that when they send him back in time, he would at least have some vague memory of what a phone book is and what
Yes.
a payphone is. But that's also the exact same technique that the machine uses. It's like, I'm going to find a payphone. How do you teach a machine
Wikipedia.
that kind of stuff? Like, that's what Matt was like. He's like, it would be so complex to teach a machine. Okay, in the 1980s, we had these things called payphones, which is how we communicated. And at those payphones, you'll find a thing called a phone book, which lists everybody in the city, and now you have to go searching for her.
I don't
Right,
know
yeah.
that I don't know
he
that
did
I
use
can
some human
definitely-
logic.
Yeah.
Well, but again, we don't know with Cyberdyne and advanced technology in terms of computer programming and what the AIs then are able to then program and do. I mean, if you want to not make it difficult, you can just say that they've gotten to a place where they can mimic human logic strings or whatever.
Yeah.
But that brings me to time stories.
Yeah.
And how much do they bug the crap out of you because you're constantly looking for anomalies and looking for paradoxes and looking for things that just drive you crazy.
And I literally was like writing out my argument, and then I was like, wait, no. The only reason why that works is because he was born later. That's the only reason why this timeline can continue on a loop if it needs to.
Because he's essentially
he's killed, but
the son is essentially sending back his father to end the war so he can't be born because he then wouldn't be able to be sent back, right? So it's kind of an odd...
It's a paradox.
It's a paradox,
but it's like a good kind because it's not far enough back where like things can really get jacked up. Or I should say the father is not... the fact that he dies doesn't prevent him from conceiving... Well, no. Yeah, the fact that he, the fact that he dies, and the fact that they conceive her son doesn't prevent him from being born again to still carry out the mission again.
Yeah,
right. So that's
because
what
he can always
be.
She can always tell him like, "Hey, you have to send your father back at some point."
Right. Or just send the guy. She doesn't even have to say his name because he said that she didn't talk about him much.
Right.
Like his name or anything to preserve the timeline.
But I watched the most recently made Terminator movie, and I
still haven't seen that.
Is it T3?
No, God,
it's
the one where
Christian Bale
with Batman in it.
Yeah,
because he does
Salvation,
Batman
Terminator
voice.
Salvation.
Yeah.
and he knows. He says Kyle Reese is the key to this whole mission. Like, we have to keep him alive.
Oh, that means they ruined it.
Yes. Of course they did.
Many would agree, Cassie. I think.
I mean, I've only seen the first one, but I'm guessing they shouldn't do that. And you said T2 is better.
T2 is an incredible film.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny to
For
me
very
because-
different reasons. It's a very different kind of movie to me.
Because I like the first one better than the second one, but I also have that nostalgia problem, right? I mean, it was the year I graduated from high school. It's one of the first R-rated movies I saw. It's kind of hard to fight with nostalgia sometimes.
Well, and the first one is a great movie. And what I really like is the interplay between the two movies, because Sarah Connor is such a normal 1980s lady in the Terminator. Like, she works at a crappy job where kids are dumping stuff into her apron, which that was hilarious.
I wanted to kill that kid.
I wanted to kill all of her customers.
I know,
All of the
right?
customers,
She's got
yeah.
terrible customers. You know, she lives with a roommate with a weird boyfriend, but she loves him anyway. Like, she's just, you know, a normal, totally normal person. And then at the end, you see her starting to become the legend, the Sarah Connor legend.
Right.
And then in the second movie, she has fully realized that new reality. And she is so badass. So I love seeing that character growth. Talk about fantastic character growth.
Right.
And well-written female lead character.
In the
really
second
great
film?
Between both of them, I feel.
Well, right, because I was frustrated. And I'd mentioned this, you know, I was like, why can't she drive the car while he's shooting at Arnold? Like, why can't she do all these things? And it's like, well, you know, if you're not
She's
exposed to
never
that,
done that before.
it's not exactly something they teach you.
Yeah.
But it is. I mean, again, in that style of the action movies, you know, in the post-Matrix world, and really in the post-Terminator 2 Sarah Connor world, even your average woman turns out to be a badass, which is that whole sort of anti-give me a strong woman argument is like, well, why do we all have to be that kind of strong? You know, is there not value in being just a normal everyday person who is struggling with being a normal everyday person and figuring stuff out?
And that goes for male characters too, of course.
Yeah,
so there's that whole
absolutely.
expectation that the male character is going to know what to do, and you know, having not been exposed to mass murder before. But yeah, so after I got over that, and then started looking at how she was, you know, learning, she was evolving in that 48-hour period or whatever.
Right.
But I'm able to see that. I was like, okay, that's cool. That is a cool arc. So knowing that she becomes.
I love how
badass.
just completely freaked out she is for a good portion of this film.
Yeah,
I'm
for
like,
sure.
this is exactly how I would be reacting in this situation. I'd be screaming. I'm in a strange man's car. He's telling me not to move. Like, I would be freaking out. She trusts the police. They tell her it's all going to be okay. She totally believes them, because who wouldn't believe the police in that situation? I love how they wrote all of that stuff into this movie.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I'd be like, you guys, no, you have to get me to a safe house. I'm not staying here. This is the first place he'll look.
Well, I didn't like, the only illogical aspect of the cops was, or the part that I didn't like, is they completely disregarded the fact that even though this guy seemed crazy, he did identify the man who had killed like 50 people in a night. So like, rather than, you don't have to dissect his time travel story. Like, you should be trying to find this bastard.
Yeah,
that
and
killed a bunch of people.
oh my god, the guy at the front desk.
Oh, I
When
know.
Arnold comes up and he's like, "Hey, I'm here to get Sarah Connor," and you're like, "Somebody's been killing everybody with the name Sarah Connor." You pretend not to know what's going on. You just
That's why he's at the desk.
Oh yeah, she's in the back. Blah blah blah. And you're just like, "Are you fucking stupid?"
But then the way he dies.
The way
Oh,
he
he
gets
gets
all of his
smashed.
colleagues killed.
Yeah.
I don't think he would have been able to stop the Terminator if he tried.
No, nobody can stop it except
Yeah.
for Sarah Connor.
Apparently. And her son.
Yes. So if you had to pick between the three main characters, how would you rank them in terms of your favorite?
Sarah Connor.
And then,
I don't know. Reese and the Machine are kind of tied for me.
okay, fair.
Reese and Sarah are tied for me.
I'd go, gosh, I don't know. I'd go Sarah, then Ginger, and then that sassy girl who did the ticket booth in Tech Noir.
Hey, $4.50. Really? Seriously.
I really like Arnold in this movie.
He is
as
great.
crazy as it is, and I know many of us looked up online that originally James Cameron, for whatever reason, wanted to hire him for the Reese character.
Yeah.
Which, oh my God, what a different movie that would have been.
Completely.
But I think people can either love Arnold or hate Arnold with his, funny accent and all that kind of stuff. But it just turns out to be like this perfect portrayal for me. And I just
Absolutely.
love him in it.
It's
It's
an
one of
iconic
his
role.
best.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's definitely one of his best. I think this and Conan are my two favorite Arnold roles.
He just had so few lines in this movie, and so much of what he did was him just digging an eyeball out of his head that it was hard for me to, I was just like, oh wow, he's a big scary robot, but I couldn't, he was just a big scary robot.
I think he knew his own limitations as far as acting nuances. How James Cameron allegedly did not know that.
I know.
Beyond me.
I always wonder, because we pulled that off of the IMDb trivia, and I always wonder how accurate those things are.
I actually read it in other articles as
Had
well,
you?
so I'm assuming that it has a little bit of legs.
You better not be lying to us, Internet.
They've never done that before. Why would you think that?
Never ever.
Ever. Well, in that same article where I had read about that, they were also talking about the effort that he made to really, spent months in advance with all the weapons training and teaching himself not to blink when he fires, which is an incredibly hard
that's
thing to
hard.
do.
He's great. He's great.
Yeah, no,
in
I
it,
appreciate
but,
that.
But it's it's not really a character to me. It's just the big scary machine. Even in Iron Giant, they gave him a soul and
Oh my God. I cannot believe you referenced Iron Giant, because Matt and I were talking about the end, all the pieces of the Terminator everywhere. And Matt says, well, that got him. And I answered, well, what if it's like the Iron Giant and he can recall all of the pieces to himself? What a great movie.
Well, that's what they do with the Liquid Terminator.
That
later
is what
in the
they do
series.
with the Liquid Terminator.
Wait a
That's
minute,
good
there's a
point.
liquid Terminator.
Anyway, all right, we're going far afield here. I'm pulling it back. I'm going to try and
Spoiler.
pull it
Is that
back.
like a generation away that they do that?
So speaking of, wait, what were we talking about?
I
we
don't know.
were rating our favorite characters,
that's
and I
right.
was
We're
saying
talking
why I
about
felt
right-
like the Terminator wasn't one of the characters.
She jumped all the way to Ginger.
Did you, you didn't tell us your list of characters.
Well, Terminator's my top. I really love, I love Arnie, and then I would have to say Sarah, and then Reese. Although I really like Michael Baine's performance as well. His character, I guess, just isn't as compelling to
Yeah.
me as Sarah's is. They don't give him much of an arc, really. So her story's a little bit more interesting.
Well, but he doesn't, he served his entire purpose. He
Sperm donation?
Yeah.
He was already at the end of his
Well,
story
in protection,
Yeah.
right?
Protection,
I mean,
yeah, he did
it kind
protect her.
of the plan falls apart if Sarah dies. So,
True.
Yeah.
Protecting his
indeed.
progeny.
Yeah.
His progeny that hadn't come around yet.
Come around yet.
Yeah.
So in terms of other references, I noticed, and you really like Aliens too, there are some,
Yeah.
in terms of scenes, the scene where she's pulling her face away as he's reaching through the grate is, is
very Ellen Ripley, pre-Ripley.
it would be the precursor to that
Yeah.
scene in Ripley. But it does seem like you can begin to see sort of James Cameron style that he sticks with. And I'm not a huge James Cameron fan, really, but I do like this movie.
Well, and this was only I think this was his second movie.
Yeah, Piranhas 2 or
Piranhas
something.
2, that's right. And then the very next movie he did after this was Alien.
It really took off.
Was it Alien or Aliens?
Aliens, I believe.
You're right, it was the second one. Which is another, like,
really
one of my
movie.
all-time favorite movies.
So
Yeah.
wait, Aliens is the sequel?
Second.
Yeah.
Yes, number
So
2.
he didn't do the first one?
No.
Oh.
That was Ridley Scott.
Oh, right. That's right.
Really, none of them are my favorite.
I
I
know.
like Ridley Scott's movies, most of them.
Yeah.
So the other interesting thing I read about James Cameron online is that he cut his teeth with Roger Corman.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, which I guess makes sense. He was like a creature feature guy for
Yeah.
a long time. Boy, did he trade in well on that experience.
Yeah, he really did.
He really did.
Yeah.
Do other people generally like his movies or not like his movies? Do you guys...
I like his movies. I like James Cameron movies. Well, it depends. Like, I like Terminator. I like Aliens. I'm trying to pull up his. Titanic is so-so. Avatar is so-so.
Avatar was visually stunning.
It really was. And we're about to be bombarded with Avatar sequels, by the way.
Oh, gross. What else
I
is
did
there
not
to
enjoy
say?
that. Oh,
You
The
gentrified
Abyss.
a planet.
He did The Abyss, which is a fantastic movie.
Oh, I've heard it's
Don't
great.
like it.
I
don't
love
like
that
it.
movie.
Really?
Matt and I love that movie. You had to have been like the right age when you first saw that movie, I think. Great special effects in that. And then he also did
True Lies.
which is a great that's one of Matt's all-time favorite movies. And I have mixed feelings about it. I think that's one of those movies he grew up watching. Like, his parents saw it in the theater and thought it was great, so he grew up watching it. And the first time I saw it was when we were dating. And I was like, yeah, this is entertaining. It's awesome.
Yeah,
Another movie that played in the background
yeah.
for me.
I definitely like his earlier work, clearly, because on
Yeah.
that list, the first two are really the only two that I really like. So
So here's just because I mentioned it, here's the Avatar release schedule. Avatar 2, 2016, Avatar 3, 2017, Avatar 4, 2018, and they're all in pre-production right now.
Are you kidding
I'm
me?
not
What's
kidding
the
you.
point? Why? It's been a couple years, guys. Let it go.
It made a lot of money.
It did make a lot of money.
Money.
I mean, he had to
As did this
spend a lot of
movie.
money to make that money.
Yeah, he
but
did.
Yeah. So this movie, I looked it up. I know, Cassie, you often do this too, but I looked it up on Mojo, Box Office
Box Office
Mojo.
Oh, I
Mojo,
love
yeah.
Box Office Mojo.
So its budget was $6.4 million. Its production budget,
Oh, tiny.
and I know, right?
That's tiny.
It was number one at the box office opening weekend, and it made $4 million.
Oh, so it didn't
Oh,
make
inflation. That's part of it.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I wonder
it's
how much.
craziness.
Obviously, it's made a ton of money since.
yeah. I didn't write down what its total gross was. I'm
And they
sure
were-
it's
yeah.
it's huge. I'm sure
That's
they've
the
made their
only
money
reason
back
why.
at
Yeah.
$6.4 million production budget.
And they were willing to make a sequel, so
It made a lot. I'm
Yeah.
sure it made
A
a lot.
sequel, and then another sequel, and then another
Yeah.
sequel, and then
so it must have God in video stores or something. It must have made a bunch of money back.
yeah.
Well, if it made 6 or 4, that was probably just domestic.
That was just domestic.
So
yes.
it could have done.
And that was just
well.
opening weekend. Again, I didn't look
Yeah.
up the total gross.
Its total lifetime gross domestically is 38 million.
Yeah.
But worldwide it's 78 million.
So
Goodness.
they made some money there.
Yeah.
Just a little.
Just a little.
Yeah, that's the only reason to justify. I mean, and if you were to compare, I don't mean to derail the conversation to these days, but that if you're going to compare how much they spent and the lifetime gross of the film compared to films these days, the weight is not the same. Like the films these days, they spend so much money, and while they do make $1 billion eventually, while it's in theaters, internationally, it doesn't compare to spending $6 million and making $78 million.
Right.
I mean, there's no way that films these days could make that kind of increase.
Bang
yeah,
for
kind
the
of bang,
buck.
comparatively. Yeah.
Interesting.
Good for them.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So, talking about James Cameron, the other folks that worked on this film, I didn't recognize any of them, but I was very much intrigued that there was actually a woman in the top categories. When you look at IMDb and those top people who are listed are usually almost solid men, and in this case Gale Anne Hurd is credited as a co-writer, and I was just so intrigued that I clicked on her link on IMDb, and I was like, whoa, holy Holy crap, this woman has done a lot, including currently writing for The Walking Dead, which of course is a current huge hit.
And it should be specified that she's an executive producer, so that means she's not just writing, but she's calling the shots on a lot of stuff
as well.
Yeah.
And she had been, what I had read was that she was starting her producer career about the time that this film was made, and I guess really helped James Cameron with the script, and so she got the co-writer. But I was just fascinated by this woman who clearly has had a very successful long-term career in Hollywood, and I'd never heard of her before, which I thought was kind of sad.
That's awesome.
I agree. I think it's sad, and I was looking at her work too, and I think she was a producer for Aliens as well, because
She is.
Yeah, so I mean, in addition to all of the Terminator, she was the producer. I don't know if she's the writer for that, but it is an interesting thing how someone can kind of be a part of one of the biggest franchises at the beginning, the biggest franchises in history, and not get recognition.
Right, any kind of pop culture recognition,
Yeah.
anyway.
Or-
Because I'm sure within the industry people know who she is. I would.
Oh,
I would
yeah.
hope.
People know who she is. I can guarantee you that.
But I didn't.
She's got her name on quite a few impressive projects,
Yeah.
like Punisher, Warzone, The Incredible Hulk, Aeon Flux, The Punisher, Terminator 3, Hulk, Armageddon.
Oh, is that as a producer?
Yeah. Alien Nation, The Abyss, Aliens, Terminator. So she's worked with James Cameron
Cameron a
quite a
lot,
bit.
yeah.
She's like the Lucille Ball of our day.
I like that comparison.
She just kind of let her. I guess she chose to be in the background, which is fine. Some people thrive that way, but it is an interesting thought that she's not a household name.
Right.
She's
change
pushing
that.
60. Yeah, let's change that.
Yeah,
Keep making
right.
movies, Gale Anne Hurd.
Or TV shows, because that's in.
Yeah.
She could make her
Yes.
own. She has, having worked on The Walking Dead, although I guess they're working on a spinoff.
Oh, are they really?
Yeah.
I haven't heard-
So
I
maybe
haven't
she's
been
a part
keeping
of
up on
that.
the news.
I'm
Yeah.
not a Walking Dead gal, so.
Yeah.
What can you
Me-
possibly
I'm not
spin
either.
off? What are we going to follow the zombies instead now? What's going to happen?
That is in. Zombies have hearts.
Oh my god.
It's that father and son from season 1.
Ooh.
Actually, that wouldn't be a bad idea at all.
Okay, you got to delete that from the podcast so no one steals it, and then you can start developing.
It's mine,
that.
officially trademarked and copyright right now.
Well, let's pull it back to the Terminator, the topic of this podcast.
Oh, is that what we're here to
That's
discuss?
what we're here to talk about, actually.
Sorry, Gale Anne
Is it
Hurd.
maybe?
Sorry.
Well, sorry, Walking Dead people. Maybe we'll do that podcast soon. So none of the other names in terms of behind the screens jump out at me either. Adam Greenberg as the cinematographer, Mark Goldblatt as the editor, and Brad Fidel, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, for the score, which is, again, one of those things that's so totally 80s. It reminded me of Big Trouble in Little China in a lot of ways, but it is very much an 80s score.
I definitely recognize Goldblatt's name.
Oh, you do? What else has he been on?
Because he's a big editor. He's edited X-Men: The Last Stand, Bad Boys 2, Pearl Harbor, Hollow Man, Armageddon, Starship Troopers, True Lies, Super Mario Brothers.
So he's done a fair
Mario
amount.
Brothers.
Oh, he also edited Rambo: First Blood.
So big.
A lot of incest
Yeah.
going on at that
Yeah.
group.
Yeah. Which makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
you want to work with the team that you're comfortable working with. I mean,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
I totally
no,
get
it's
it.
totally a normal thing.
So let's talk about, well, we kind of have been as we've been talking about these people, and it's so clear that, when this movie was made in the 80s and we're, 30 years later, right? So these people have had an impact on pop culture simply because they've been working in the industry for 30 years. And they've made a bunch of follow-up Terminator movies that the impact of this film and these filmmakers is kind of big, I would say.
I think so.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And even though I do think that any young person who watches this movie would have like a major, their mind would be blown, I do think they've heard of Terminator and have some understanding of what it is, even without watching it.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So
And
that's
they're like, isn't that show that got canceled several years ago?
Or they know it only because they've seen Terminator 4.
God.
Right,
yeah.
and they haven't necessarily gone back, so they, their
Hopefully they
impression
have.
of it might be, well, it was just so I wasn't really interested in seeing any of the other ones, kind of a thing.
They're
which
making
can
a new
happen.
one with.
Yeah, they're
Amelia
rebooting
Clarke?
the franchise.
Yeah,
it?
there's
Yeah.
like 5 or 6, I think. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, Terminator Genesis.
Yeah.
And then
And it's
spelled
spelled
weird.
so stupid.
Genesis.
It's like GENYSIS or something like that.
There's like a 1 thrown in there
Oh my
and like a
God.
lot or I don't know.
But it's very similar to, the same thing with Star Wars. If you,
I'm
if
so
you're
mad.
first introduction to Star Wars is one of the later 3 films, you might be like, oh, well, these are crap, so I'm never going to go back and watch the first 3. You know, it's kind of the same thing where you enter into a long series of things can very much color.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You know, what you think of the rest of the franchise, for sure. So, Bechdel test.
Sarah talks to her roommate.
That's why I say it passes. That scene at the very beginning. Well, I can't remember what they talk about, whether they're talking about the boyfriends or what. But there's distinctly for me, the one scene I remember is when her roommate at the restaurant is showing her the film of the other Sarah Connor being shot. There's no males in that conversation at all. So in the very basics, basic sense, this movie passes.
It does pass.
And she does say that great line of, you know, think about it this way, in 100 years, no one will care.
Right.
Yeah, so it's like, you know, your life sucks right now, but...
Right.
Yeah. So.
And I think it does do a good job of depicting a nice female relationship with her and her roommate.
I agree. It's supportive, and it doesn't revolve around any males.
They're both clearly completely different people who have their own ways of living, but they love each other and they support each other, and, you know, they get along and whatever. So I do like that part of it. It could have always, you know, I could always do with more, but
though to be fair, Reese doesn't really talk. I mean, short of being grilled by the idiots at the station
and explaining the
future, he doesn't really talk to anyone either.
I know there's like
to your point about
little
the little
dialogue.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's true.
Nobody talks a lot. I will point out, just because I when I was searching for information about this story, I came across a Slate magazine article, and I used to work there, and so it intrigued me. But it was about it was a music theory article about the time signature for that opening music piece, and that there has been great debate. Apparently, when I just don't key into those kinds of things, but it caught my eye because it was a Slate magazine article, and apparently the end result is that it's a time signature of 1316.
Okay.
Right? I was just like, no, that makes no sense to me.
Why would you
whatsoever.
ever write something in that in that time signature?
Well, in the article, apparently the author of the article spoke to Brad Fiedel, and, you know, going for something, if you're going to go plucking, and so you're going to do kinds of things to make something feel very off kilter. Picking a really unusual signature that's offbeat is going to help you do that. But he said it was Brad Fiedel said there was a very hard piece to work on, and I can imagine doing it. What did you say it was? 13/16? 13/16.
That's
crazy.
Why? That's why you put that sheet of music up and the musicians look at it and go, why? I hate you. I haven't played this yet, but I already hate you.
Why not just break it up into a couple 7/8s, a couple 3/4s, a couple 2/3s? Like, just break it up.
Well, that said, it's a very iconic piece of music and very easily recognizable.
That's the one thing that's lacking for me in the Terminator is the music.
I think the score throughout is not very interesting, and it relies a lot on boom, boom, boom.
And
boom, boom, boom.
Synthesizers.
And synthesizers. But that opening piece of music is very iconic.
It is, for sure.
I'll give it to him for that.
Yeah.
Good movie. Glad I saw it as an adult, so I can actually remember the things properly. I literally attributed Come With Me If You Want to Live to Arnold in my brain.
Oh, interesting.
Why? Why did I do that? Again.
Maybe
because it's more famous.
It's more famous, yeah. And I said, I'm like, he didn't say that line. A lot of awakenings happening.
Yeah, it'll always be one of my nostalgic favorics from my youth.
I love Bill Paxton's appearance in this movie.
Yes.
Such a jerk.
Bill Paxton.
Going back to that, they loved a lifetime in one night thing. I'm just gonna say it really quick, but if they loved a lifetime in one night and that guy came to her like a virgin, I feel like it would have been one really awkward lifetime of love.
Yeah.
Wait, he was a virgin?
Yeah, he said he's never been with anybody.
Yeah.
I missed that. And
then she seduced him.
She totally did.
Good for her.
Yeah.
They seduced each other, though.
I'd be lying if I said I'd never seduced anybody. So I'm not saying bad for her. I'm just saying she's just like, well, then let's do this.
They totally seduced each other because he's saying how he's never been with anybody, and then he explains how he's been in love with her ever since he saw a picture of her, and so she's like, "Come over here, bro."
I have a hard time. I can't believe I missed that line.
Yeah.
I have a hard time believing in their steampunk future that he didn't have sex.
She does that totally.
Yeah.
She does that totally not awkward thing where she's like, what are the girls like where you're from?
Smooth, Sarah.
It's pretty bad. But adorable also.
Oh,
What do you mean? We all know what you mean. Don't even pretend.
So she's basically in the movie playing like an 18 or 19-year-old.
Which
Talking
is
to
a
this
stretch.
27-year-old. She's like, let me take care of you. It's going to be
Come on,
fine.
it was like Blue Lagoon.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Whoa.
All right. All
Oh my
right.
God, that movie.
All right.
I never
Another gem from
never
my youth.
saw it.
I never saw it.
my
Never
God.
never saw the end of it.
Heard enough about it.
Oh my God, that movie.
Thanks for that.
You're welcome. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us today. It's been Alice.
Bri.
Megan.
And Cassie.
If you can find us at educatinggeeks.com, and we use hashtag educatinggeeks, and you can find us on Facebook, Google+, Twitter, and Tumblr. If you enjoy listening to the show, any of our shows, make sure that you subscribe to us on Stitcher and iTunes. Subscribing will get you immediate access to our new episodes as soon as they're posted. And while you're there, if you would give us a rating or a review or a comment, it would be greatly appreciated. We'd love to get feedback from you. The Terminator Geek Supplies is going to come out next Wednesday, which is October 15th, and then the Educating Geeks Drinking Game Rules podcast will be posted the following Friday on October 17th. We'd like to thank 2 of our new Tumblr followers. Actually, they're not new. These are Tumblr followers who reblog us and like a lot of our stuff, so thank you so much for that. And that's Investa Awesome and J Rice Crispy. I love both of those usernames. And then 2 of our newest Tumblr followers are Lazy Pineapple and Andrea OJ. Welcome to the 2 of you, and I hope you like what you find. So we want to give you an announcement, a special announcement. We are going to be recording an episode live at the Comic and Media Expo on October 18th at the Mesa Convention Center. We're going to be in the Palm Roy panel room at 5:30 p.m., and we're going to be talking about the web series The Guild. So if you're going to be attending, we really would enjoy having you in our audience and having you live on our podcast. That podcast is not going to go live until November, but in the meantime, we'll be back. In our next episode, we'll be educating Andrea on Hellboy and Hellboy 2, The Golden Army. So don't fall in love with the virgin from the future.
Rule of thumb.
Or do.
Or do.
Only
There
if
you
your
go.
son's going to save the world.
Here we go. If you fall in love with a virgin from the future, expect him to die.
There we
Oh,
go.
God, that's so tragic. All right, bye, everybody.
Bye.